Well, hello, Glue Troopers. Max of Max's Models here with Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
And Captain Ken is out on the boat, so maybe he'll chime in with us later, but he apparently had more important things to do, like sail around in circles. So if you see me leaning over, it's this setup I've got here to improve the lighting, but I kind of have to look around it to see my control panel. The control panel! And there we go. All right, and so uh, first off, hello everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I thought one of the things we talked about probably next week. What'd you say we want to talk about next week? The Indy 500 models.
I want to talk about Indy 500 models next week because it's the Indy 500 next week.
Well, then you're going to have to carry most of the show and do most of the legwork because I don't know that much about cars like you do. And
Okay.
but you did say
Uh,
these guys are buzzing around the track at over 230 now.
they were averaging laps at 233 and change. They were going in the high 230s, like 240s down the back and front straight. They were flying.
Yeah, last time I went that fast, the gear and flaps were up.
Yeah.
So I
And you had
thought,
100 and you had 100 other people with you.
yeah, but they were along for the ride. I was the one on the gas pedal. um, I was having a chat with my wife earlier, and I was, well, I say I was talking to her. I was boring her to tears, talking about models and this DH10 I'm working on, the old Aurora kit. And a lot of people have been making comments about, well, it's an Aurora kit, man, as being a kid trying to build that thing, and I was. But when I was talking to my wife about it, she's like, well, maybe that might be a good idea for a live stream topic. I think it is. And it's basically the old kits, are they as bad as we remember them? And since I built a lot of old kits, I got some pretty strong opinions on that. But it brought me up to wondering about, there was a certain uh, innocence to the simplicity of a lot of the old kits, even if they weren't the greatest thing, the fits weren't perfect. And uh, of course, that's back when dies were handmade and everything. There were no laser cutting and stuff. But I started thinking, okay, were these kits as bad as we thought? So I grabbed a couple of random samples of things to talk about here.
Well,
And
the plastic was different too.
well, she brought that up about that was actually the point she made. She says you can't really judge an old kit today like you would have back then because after sitting in a box for 40 or 50 years, plastic warps and everything and gets brittle and stuff like that, and that's absolutely true. Um, but even I think we all knew that there were some uh, companies that had, I don't I mean they made some good kits, but they also had kits with issues. Now a lot of these kits I never built, but I know some of you guys have. And I was always surprised me how a company like Lindberg could make some really, really good kits. I built that Dornier 335 172nd scale several times. In fact, the Tom Daniel, that's what he modified to make that kit bash that I finished off for him. That's actually right here over my shoulder. And yeah, it's a pretty straightforward little kit, no surprises. I haven't built their boats, but I do remember that Lindbergh was famous for using boxes that were way too big. You wound up with a dinky little model and a lot of stuff that didn't fit worth a crap or didn't look right when you were done. But some of their kits actually were really good. If I remember right, their little Stearman was probably the best Stearman model, but so was their SE5. It was really solid. Then you build some of their other stuff, and you're like, is this the same company? And they were original molds. Now, so as we're talking about older models, I'm thinking of stuff from the 50s and 60s. And uh,
You got to remember back then there wasn't such a there wasn't such a focus on making it like there is today that it's completely authentic.
mm-hmm. Well, Brian,
It was like, well, let's just get this kid out and it looks like the kid, and it doesn't have to have that much detail.
yeah, a 9-year-old's going to build it and destroy it in a week. Well, Brian
Right.
Tate brings up a
So,
really good thing. He says he didn't even know they made kits without flash until he got a Tamiya.
exactly.
And I'm thinking, and people are, well, the molds are getting old. Oh, I remember them having flash in the 60s and 70s. I mean, the tech just wasn't where it is today. And I remember stuff like NPC had the profile series. I think it was NPC profile series for a while, that all of the decals were one big waxy sheet of film. You had to cut the decal out individually. But the worst part is that it was like wax paper. The bloody decals didn't want to sit down on the model, and I didn't have solve set in those days. KLS says he's built the Monitor in Merrimack, I built the 335 a couple of times, but the Monitor in Merrimack, that actually seems like it, which, by the way, is the CSS Virginia. It was the Merrimack when it was a Union ship. They renamed it the CSS Virginia, but people never got away from calling it its original name. But I thought it was a pretty cool, nice box art, pretty cool idea for a kit. And but I do remember that when my brother and I would go to buy Lindberg kits, we always just had these. It had to really be a subject matter we wanted, because we had the idea, okay, it's a Lindberg kit, so it's going to be iffy at best. And but which, by the way, in all fairness to Lindberg, after Todiff got his hands on the place, they really cleaned up their act a lot. And I built that Lindberg Polera, and I was like, wow, this thing's better than MPC. It's almost up there with the Johan kit. Everything fit nicely. It was detailed. But then I found out that was after George Todiff had taken over, and he probably put extra work in the Polera model, because his Color Me Gone, I think, was based on a Polera. And so, did you hear Keeler's story about when he met George Todiff? He didn't know who he was.
Yep.
And I was like, if you'd stopped and listened to him and taken that job, you probably would have had a very different life. He goes, I know, I've thought about it many times. Better or worse, who's to say? But
well, they wanted to hire him at AMT, and Barris was introducing him to the guys, and Keeler was like, he says, what are you doing? He says, he wanted to offer your job, and Keeler goes, oh, he says, well, I didn't want to live in Michigan anyway.
Yeah, what was he, 19 years old?
Yeah.
But I can understand not, being a California boy, although he did wind up in Salt Lake, so he still wound up in the snow. Yes, Lindberg was another company after Todiff took over. And I'm not trying to knock on Paul Lindberg. I mean, he started the company, he kept it going for a long time until he retired. But when Paul got into the business, it was a different business. You could get away with those pretty simple kits. And, Lindberg was really losing ground, I think, when Todiff took over. And, well, I say that. In a way, they were almost aiming at a different market. But, and Lind, like I say...
They were an afterthought when Todiff took over. They were like when you went to the hobby store and you'd already bought everything that was Revell and Monogram and AMT and oh yeah, okay, I'll try this Lindberg kit. That's what they were at that point.
Yeah, because they made something I don't have or no one else made.
Yeah.
Which by the way, brings up something I wanted to ask you about. These Lindy Loonies. I don't think I was aware of these until today when I was putting these slides together. If I had, I totally forgot about them. You were talking about this insane nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, those were the counter to the Hawk weirdos. Hawk was really successful with the weirdos. That they didn't expect that they were going to be as successful as they were. And Lindberg then jumped in with Lindy Loonies to try to, get in on that, and to get in on sort of the Aurora monster craze.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you, I don't know how these things did, but judging by their relative rarity, I'm assuming they did not do well, because the monsters, well, the Aurora monsters already had a built-in audience because they were from Universal, the movie monsters.
Yep.
The weirdos, which was it Bill Campbell put those together?
The Brainbuster in the middle of the slide. They came out with a whole bunch of stuff like that were like Rube Goldberg-y kind of things.
Yeah, I actually just grabbed that one picture. I did see others on Scalemates. I just figured one for some of the glow in dark. They were boxed differently also. Oh, you're talking about Brainbuster. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about that glow monster. That was something else. Yeah, I saw they had the weird contraptions that I guess were motorized.
Yeah, or they were wind up with a rubber band.
Okay. I mean, at least they did something. I mean, I can see the comical effect, but these loonies are just, the monsters.
The ghouls, yeah,
Yeah,
no, they're stupid looking.
yeah, they're just a complete swing and a for. I mean, I don't know how they sold, but from where I'm sitting, they're a swing and a miss. They don't have any of the for lack of a better word, they don't have any of the charm of the weirdos.
No.
And the
And
weirdos.
they don't have any of the presence of the Universal monsters.
Oh well, yeah, nobody's, of course not. Um, and I actually, was it Bill Campbell did that, but I'll tell you where I think the different why it was the way it was. Okay, Aurora does the monsters, built-in audience, and they had to fight. The project manager had to fight to get them made. But okay, it works for obvious reasons. We all know that story. Great. Then Hawk, I think one of the reasons the Weirdos caught on was, I want to say it was Bill Campbell, the artist. He was the one that came up with them. They were his brainchild, and being an artist and having this mad idea, the over the top idea of what he wanted, you sort of had a person's real vision in there with the artistic talent that's behind that. These things were clearly nothing more than a quick and dirty, cheap knockoff, a chance to grab into it. It looks like very little thought went into it, and pretty second-rate artwork, to be quite frank.
Oh, they were probably pretty second-rate kits too.
I imagine. So these don't have, for lack of a better way to put it, they don't have any of the heart of the weirdos, and they certainly don't have any of the draw of the Aurora monsters. That's my 2 cents. I'm what about the goofy clock? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how Lindberg did with it, but I think they were definitely better off with staying with in their wheelhouse. And they also did down here, you'll see they did the lower left. Yeah, they also did the clock thing, and it's okay. I mean, I guess eventually just run out of stuff to start making models of. But Lindberg to me was always the bottom tier. I didn't build that many Aurora kits. Them and Aurora could kind of beat each other up for it. Although I understand some of the stuff, like their custom chassis
was really good.
Yeah. So they kept you on. They kept you guessing. And
they made some large scale. They made a Fiat, and they made a 32 Ford hot rod, and they made this custom car thing that was it was big. And they did pretty good with those things because they were things that nobody else did.
Mm-hmm. And John Ashley, I actually had that Lindberg Heinkel 111 in the other shed up on the shelf, just out of sight. It was not a bad kit. He's right. It is pretty sturdy. And it was the outline of the model was fine. What the problem was that you had that greenhouse canopy on the Heinkel 111, and the cockpit consisted of I think it was a seat and a yoke. That was it. So there was zero detail in the cockpit, and this was an airplane where you could see everything. Well, almost zero detail. So I sprayed glue over it and covered it in talcum powder, made it on a snowy scene, and frosted the windows so you didn't see there was no detail in the cockpit. If you were to get an aftermarket detail kit or detail it yourself, it's actually not a bad kit. Not great kit, but not a bad kit. They had the dimensions about right, I think. The wings might have been a little off, but you go on some of these websites and people are talking about how the wing of this model is, just fractions off. And I'm like, look, if your eye can't tell, who cares?
Exactly.
But there are some guys, that's their thing. But Lindberg... Go ahead.
If you look at just a couple of the boxes, you'll see the sport fishing boat, the Monitored Merrimack, electric motor included. They did things like that to separate them from the other manufacturers because they really didn't have that much going.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all those Lindberg motors you had to build yourself. I only ever got one to halfway work. A couple of guys I know said they got into work. One said, yeah, I got mine to work, but my dad was an electrician. So I was like, oh, okay,
right.
Well, that's almost cheating. But I did get one to work one time, and man, I was just so proud of myself. Bucket list item checked off. And I long since lost the motor, but I still have the model shipped somewhere in the TARDIS. Um, I might cut it up and feed it to one of my Godzillas or something. But I think it was the USS Manchester, a light cruiser. But I only bought it because it had the motor, and some of the stuff had rusted. But I just sanded it until it was shiny again. Let's see. The Lindbergh's PT Boat 109, it was actually good. Yeah. Like I say, they actually they would fool you. They would come out with some good kits, and then they would come out with some genuine schlock. Then I can't help but wonder, they got that Avro Vulcan, and I'm like, I didn't even know Lindbergh made one. I'm gonna part of me wants to see that. Yeah.
Well, celebrating vintage model kits makes a good point. Lindberghs were no worse than Aurora.
No, I put them on par with each other. And Lindbergh and Aurora both did have large catalogs. They made a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's Bruce missed at Model Ships. I think he calls them Flashberg, which is fair. But like I say, Lindbergh's one of those companies. Their early stuff was nothing impressive, but over the years it got better. And then, but it's hard to live down that initial reputation.
Yeah, it is.
And this is one of those times that how can I put this? The whole subject of this live stream is, the old kits, are they as bad as we thought or as bad as we remember? In the case of Lindbergh, sometimes yes, okay, but sometimes no. So,
But
Lindbergh.
you know something? Some of the things that are re-released, even today, that were old Lindbergh kits,
Mm-hmm.
they're not half bad.
No, they're not. And one of the flaws that a lot of these old kits had were the flaws that were common to most models in that era. Like I say, we're talking about hand tool dies, and what are they running? 50,000 at a shot. So, you're going to get ones that you're occasionally going to get one that wasn't molded right, or the parts don't fit because the molds have been used a million times or whatever. And of course, all the armor had the vinyl tracks back then that you needed a stapler. Somebody needed to invent the vinyl arc welder.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned Aurora, which is next on the list, and Aurora, I'm working that DH10 I'm working on is an Aurora kit, and arguably maybe one of their better ones, but definitely Aurora. And I always found my biggest problem with Aurora kits was the fit. And the detail
the
of it.
Aurora mantra was, get first to market, make it quick, make it cheap.
Yep. Aurora was the most prone to be shaped wrong.
Issues with the Aurora kits, fit wise.
Oh yeah, they were the most likely to the molding to be off. Not to be the dimensions not to be correct. Have trouble. We all know Aurora had every part. In fact, they put the Chinook out so quick it's still listed as the HC1B before it was designated the CH47. So yeah, most likely still a test program at that point. But you got to give the devil their due. They were spitting those things out when everybody else wouldn't come out for them a couple more years. If you wanted the C119 or the C130 or the CH47, that was kind of almost your only choice, and they, generally speaking, were affordable.
Yeah.
My Lindbergh kits, pre-built motors worked fine in the bathtub.
Yeah.
How many times the kids launch their ships on torpedo attacks against their toes? But then again, I don't think the Hawk models were, they were maybe a little better than Aurora, but they weren't.
I think Hawk kits were better.
They were a little bit.
There were less of them.
Yeah.
Which could be why they were better, but they were better.
But it wasn't like a day and night leap.
No.
And it wasn't like Monogram or somebody. But
no, it was like a 10% better.
Yeah. But they were better. One of the things about Hawk though that I actually built a Hawk kit not too long ago, and I was remembering, and because I had it as a kid, and it was the Thunderbolt that had, and they gave you the option of the 2 turtle decks. You could either have the one kit could be the bubble model or the Razorback, and I thought, now that was a cool feature, added a hint of complexity. The problem you came into was whichever one you put on there. Okay, now there's something else you got to line up, clean up, but it did work. But I remember the kit was, I think it was 2 colors of plastic. They put like the engine and prop and stuff in black, so at least if you didn't have paints, you had like black wheels and black propellers, a little contrast, which is nice. But it was a fairly, how can I put it? It was a straightforward kit. Other than the turtle, it really didn't offer excessive detail or anything. But I'm thinking, yeah, but it's not a Tamiya or a Hasegawa. This thing didn't cost that much, and when you were done, it looked fine. And yeah, the Aurora World War Ones, for some reason, they got those right. In fact, the company KB wound up getting a lot of their molds, and even Monogram. In fact, that was the first thing that Monogram wanted, was Aurora's World War One molds, and that DH-10 I'm working on is one of them. And it's the DH is not a bad kit at all. It just a big gigantic biplane with multiple engines. It's just a lot to it. The thing I like about building a kit like one of these old Auroras or something is when you build a wing nut wings, I mean, you're attaching spark plug wires and putting carburetors into place and adding fuel lines and oil lubricant lines, and everything's going to be painted and fitted, and it takes you forever just to, like on the Felix though, and it's all out where you can see it, so it's worth doing right. But I'm sitting there going, my God, just the engine alone is a kit, and there's 2 of them. I mean, just the motors are full kits. And they're just fantastic kits. But sometimes you just want to put the sides together, stuff it in the cowling, and keep moving on with the model. Although I will admit, the Felix, though, when it was up on the shelf, it was one of those things that I'd walk by and stop and look at it and look close, because you went through all that trouble to put in all that detail. You wanted to take a little time to enjoy it. Whereas with these more basic kits, they look good as you walk by and see them on the shelf, and that's good enough. And but the biggest thing about these old kits isn't how good or bad they were. It was how old we were, what our skills were. I mean, we're 9 years old. What we would really have done with a Tamiya kit that we weren't doing with an Aurora kit.
Ruined it.
Yeah. At least if you're an Aurora kit, you're out $1.50, and the universe didn't care. And I remember, God, the thing that used to tick me off about Aurora, I know I've lamented this, but I swear to God, I will keep talking about this. And that is, I really wanted the Piper Aztec, and I kept buying it for like 69 cents, and it always had the clear parts from the Cherokee that didn't fit. Had an Air Force of windowless light twins, and I was just... But I buy the Cherokee, it had the right part. I did love those kits, though. I mean, God.
You'd call up Abe Shikes and thank him for that.
Yeah. And, I said I must have gotten every Friday afternoon kit made.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, though, we complain about this, but I guarantee you these factories were not, for us kids, this is the stuff our dreams and youth were made of. But if you worked in those factories, it was just a hot, sweaty, dangerous place to work.
And loud.
Yeah. And there wasn't no glamour to it. One thing I saw the Aurora, this Corvette. I don't remember if I've ever built in one of the Corvette cars or their gas station or anything.
They were the crappiest car kits ever.
Well, there was always Palmer and
Yeah, God, they were horrible.
That bad, huh?
Yeah. Don't you remember Keeler? That's how he got his job.
Yeah, he called him insulted Abe Shikes.
Went into convenience store to buy
Geiger.
something for his wife one night, and they had a bunch of them on the shelf, and he looked at them, and he called them up the next day and got a hold of Diker and said, "You make the shittiest kits in the world."
Actually, Jim got into detail with me about that during our visit. He said actually he made a series of phone calls over like the course of a year before he's able finally to get to him. So it took a while, but he finally did just pick him up. Hey, is Chuck there? Oh, let me see. You know, it's like he knew him. You know, he had it was a long con.
Yep.
But who am I talking to? Oh, you're talking to the best model builder in the world. Hey, you got a job out of it.
When they when they veered off course, when they had the hit with Skittlebolt, and Diker decided he was going to make him into a gaming company and kill the kits, they redid the showroom. And the joke in the industry was there were so many lights in the new showroom that when they flipped the switch to turn them on, the lights dimmed on Broadway. I mean, they had lights everywhere. It was so bright in there, it was like you would be blinded. And that's where they put their money. And they had a great kit business, and they just killed it. You know, regardless of the quality, they did a lot of business. They did a lot of volume, and they sold a lot of kits.
Yeah, and they could have been one of the biggest in the world, if not the.
And they had an audience. They had people who that's all they would buy would be Aurora kits.
Yeah. Well, we've got a Glutcher talking about painting wheels, and some folks are saying use the Vallejo mask and then trim it off. I actually was digging through my paints today, and I have a bottle of Vallejo mask that I forgot I had. And I was like, you know, that would have been a handy thing to know yesterday when I had to do the wheels on the DH10. So now I've got that. I've had mixed results with liquid masks.
Get round stickers.
Well,
paint the wheels silver, put a round sticker over it, then paint it black, peel the sticker off.
The only problem I have. Well, first off, they got to be the right size, and it's never the right size.
They make different size ones.
Well, I put the flat Tamiya tape over, and then just trimmed it off, and it came out okay. But because the wheels had the hub built into it, so it had the little Chinese hat shape to it. But I need to start using that decal mask. I've had mixed results with liquid masks of different kinds, and I bought some of the Vallejo stuff, but I haven't used it yet. And a lot of guys like to trim the edge of the tape and then just use the mask to cover the middle. Some guys like to put the mask on and trim it off, but make bloody sure using a really sharp X-Acto knife. But I just had a thought. It just popped into my head. If you want to lay the mask down and not have to worry about trimming it so much, because you know it's easy for that knife to go off, lay a little piece of tape, straight edge tape, like on a canopy frame, put the liquid mask on, let it harden, and then you've got a guide to peel it off, you know, that'll expose the frame but keep
Chuck just put up a comment. He said when you're doing the wheel, put the wheel down, just put a drop there and let it level out inside the wheel.
Oh yeah, that could work. Yeah, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Huh. But the you know, I don't know if I've ever seen that Aurora Chinook, but if it's anything like their C119, I will bet you get two gigantic halves that you'll have a little trouble lining up and they won't be shaped quite right. And I don't know why, but for some reason I find some kind of charm in that. The fact that it's not shaped right. I don't know why. It's kind of like, because it just reminds me of, you know, when I was young and he didn't care. Because man, when
you were young, it was just I could get it together and I put the decals on it and it looked like a plane. And that's good. You know, you weren't trying to make something that was show quality. You were just trying to put it together.
Oh my God! You know, that's the difference between being, you know, 8 and 18. You know, when you're 8, you're just, oh, look at that. And when you're 18, then you start, now you're sweating every detail. But
well, when you're 8, it's a 50-50 kit.
Yeah.
You know, it looks good from 50 feet away at 50 miles an hour. Don't buy.
I've had some cars like that. So
we all have.
But yeah, the Lindberg and Aurora kits are pretty much the way we remember them. But then you get into AMT. Now the only AMT kits I have built are the Star Trek kits and the car kits. And that's really I didn't count their aircraft because those were all just reboxed Airfix kits. And I got to give Airfix credit. Airfix kits were usually pretty decent, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying they were perfect, but I've never really had bad luck with Airfix. And as a kid, I almost never built them because, I mean, I did build a few, but they just weren't usually, mostly after NPC got involved with them. But we've all talked about it several times. The Star Trek kit, the Enterprise, was the saggy engines. Just that's all you remember from them, the wheat bulbs and the saggy engines.
Yep.
And nobody remembers anything else. You know, they also I think had the solid sheet decals that you had to trim out and everything. I might be wrong about that, but it seems like I remember one of them. You could pull the whole decal sheet off as one thing. And maybe wrong
But
on
boy,
that.
did they sell the crap out
Oh
of it.
heck yeah! Popular TV show, and they actually had the model up. I think before the show had even premiered.
Yeah, they did, and that was a big to do.
The entire reason you got the Klingon battle cruiser in the Star Trek canon was because AMT wanted more models to build.
Yeah.
That's why they foot the bill for the shuttlecraft. And for those who don't know, AMT paid for what was it? Desilu Studios. They wanted a shuttlecraft, and it wasn't in the budget. So AMT told, I think it was Stephen Poe told them, "Hey, if you'll make the shuttlecraft and show it on TV, we'll foot the bill for it as long as we get the modeling rights." And that's when they went to Gene Winfield. It was Winfield, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And he built the exterior, and they had they paid for an interior set of it to be made, and I think they also paid for the model that was used in camera, and now it's part of Star Trek canon, all because the Kit Model Company wanted to have more models to make. Same reason they made the Klingon battle cruiser, and it was just.
It's no different than Andy and Derek Brand making the Black Beauty and the Chrysler 300 convertible that you see on the turntable, so Aurora could get the rights to make the kit of the Black Beauty.
Yeah, Andy told me that they were not allowed to sell it because they weren't Hollywood union model makers, so it was leased to them. Although he said we never got them back. Nobody has any idea where they are. I'm sure they're in somebody's private collection.
Right. Yeah, they are.
I just hope somebody's kids didn't just throw them away or play with them till they broke.
That would be a crime.
And the thing is, those are blocks of wood. And Andy's primary medium was wood.
I mean, when you watch the show, the only thing that's a tip that they might be models is when the 300 rolls over and it pops up. The headlights, you can see there's like the white Elmer's glue that held the headlights in.
Mm-hmm. But you don't see it long enough for
that it wasn't the real car, because they looked exactly like the two real cars. It was amazing.
Yeah,
they did a great job on those.
And by the way, if you guys haven't seen what the Star Trek shuttle was supposed to look like, it looked very different than when Winfield designed it and built it. He had to make it, economical. That's why it looks like a Winnebago. Pretty straightforward design. The original version was all Art Deco, teardrop shaped with the warp nacelles out on arms that doubled as landing gears. Pretty cool. Very Buck Rogers looking.
And the inside of the shuttle is the most unimpressive vehicle ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing, nice about the inside. It's just like a square room with a dashboard.
Well, it was a shuttlecraft. I mean, that was its job.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting here.
They could have done a little bit better.
Yeah, but budget. And,
the round 2 kit is great.
Yeah, I have those two that you got me. I really want to get started on those. And my God, it thing's got a couple of 100 pieces. They've got every detail in there, right down to the thing with the little phasers, and it's got a full group of people in there. And,
yeah, it's a great kit.
If I ever get another, if it scales out right and ever get another one of those Enterprise bridges, I might use some of those characters. But AMT though, I got to be honest. I think I like AMT a little better than NPC.
I like them a lot better than NPC. I'm not a fan of NPC car kits.
Yeah, and the Star Wars kits had some issues too. One of the worst, I think one of the worst kit I've built in a very long time was that Death Star. It just no detail, it looked like crap. And when it broke off its string, hit the floor and busted, I just threw it away. I think that was a gift from the universe.
Well, they were fortunate that they got the license, and they ran with it. They got as many out as they possibly could. Now, that being said, although I said I'm not a fan of MPC, they did have some really nice, interesting car kits.
Mm-hmm.
One of them would be that Ford J car with the clear body.
I was going to ask you about that.
Which is like a holy grail kit. That's really hard to find, and if you find it, it's a lot of money. And the 65 Corvette, which it says on the box, manufactured by Airfix, which came with that big parachute, that's a very rare kit also.
But like you say, that's actually an Airfix kit.
Yep.
Well, tell me about the J car.
Airfix would be making a 65 Corvette, but
have you ever? Well, you've built it, right?
Not that particular one. No, I've seen it, but I've never built it. I've got a Ford J car, but not the clear body one. I've got the one with the regular white body.
Uh-huh.
Now, I've done the GT40 and the Ford GT, which they have all of those kits.
Mm-hmm.
They are very, very, very fiddly kits.
Are they original?
Which is what they're known for.
Are they original MPC molds, or are they?
They're original MPC molds. But I mean, they got every piece of suspension and this and that, and trying to get them to fit. It is really a piece of work to do it. None of the body panels fit right. You got to put them in water and bend them and twist them to get them, because they're just not molded right. And these are the original molds from the original kits.
I think AMT did do a few airplanes that were actually their own molds, but a lot of the stuff was Airfix, which made sense, I suppose. And that may have been when they were was it Kellogg's? What? Somebody.
No, it was it? It wasn't Nabisco. That was Aurora.
Nabisco was Aurora,
Mm-hmm.
not Post. Oh well, whoever it was. Some reason food companies kept getting involved in the kit model business. And Celebrating says NPC Star Wars vans. Oh God.
Fred's correct. The Budweiser wagon with the Clydesdales, that was an AMT kit. That was a great kit. That was a really well done kit. And they sold a bunch of them. I don't know what happened to it today. Yeah, Max, it's General Mills was MPC.
General Mills, that's who it was. Yes, thank you.
Because they own Lionel too.
Yeah.
And they form Fun Dimensions.
Fun Dimensions. There we go. It's been so long since I did the research on that. It all you do all these company research, and it all begins to blend in your brain after a while. I have to go back and watch my own videos.
Which in the industry they used to call them funny dimensions.
Well, MPC, like you say, I definitely found that I thought, at least as cars went, that AMT made the better model cars. Although nothing touched Johan, but although I will put a modern late Lindberg kit up against an AMT kit, but then again, that's the Greg Totiff or the George Totiff effect. And I know Monogram had a reputation for their model cars, and I think I've built some a long time ago.
The problem I always had with Monogram cars were they never sat right.
Oh, trust me, I can make that happen with any model car.
Huh?
I can make that happen with any model car.
Oh, no, but I'm saying that's the way they were.
So, we see mostly I built Monogram airplanes, most of the 148 series stuff. And I got to be honest, I built that Helldiver a while back. I got another one in the box, and I'm not going to call it a bad kit. I mean, when it's done, it looks okay. It is definitely a kit of its era. There's not a lot of detail inside. And you're never going to win a contest with one these days when you go up against these kits, even at 148 scale, that have completely detailed cockpits. So, but then again, I wouldn't have known what to do with that when I was a kid. It was a perfect kit for a kid. And Monogram had their play value, so the wheels went up and down, and the wings folded, and the canopies could slide, and the machine gun could move up and down. If you could do that without breaking anything, the bomb bay opened, which I guess that was probably a really good idea back in the '60s and '70s when you had young builders and stuff that could it. But today, of course, you'd shave all that stuff off and start adding some detail. And but you know what? Here's the funny thing, and I get back to this. I know I harp on this all the time, but it's true. Depending on what you do with your models, yeah, you're not going to win any contests with it, but you build that 1/48 scale Helldiver or Wildcat and paint it up nice and set it on your shelf, and then you build your expensive, super detailed, accurate miniatures or Tamiya kit and set it right next to it. Walk about 5 feet away and turn around. You don't notice the difference. Ken's chiming in. Hang on. We're going to merge the call. We're going for the merge. Hey. Ken? Ken?
Yeah.
Okay, you there?
Hey.
Hey. Captain Ken is on board.
Captain. Hi, Stevie.
Stevie? Skipper and Stevie are on board with us.
What's that?
Said Skipper and Stevie are on board with us.
That's right. Yay. This is so cool. I'm on the boat, and we're at a marina. We got a place to stay tonight at a marina.
Don't get anything.
Too late. Anyway.
Calamity Ken is here.
Yeah, we are here. Anyway, we got fun stuff. We got air conditioning working, which is fantastic.
Ken, that's a survival. That's a piece of survival equipment in Florida. So
yes, the main air conditioner works.
JM's saying that a couple of guys are saying that the F-14 from that Airfix USA or whatever it was shaped wrong because it was not made from the prototype of the airplane. It was made from the wooden mock-up. Yeah, a lot of models get made from either the early diagrams or mock-ups or prototypes, and that results in goofy-looking models. The thing is, the very flawed kits that are all wrong, after everybody throws them away, then you see them on eBay for $300 because now they're rare. Yes, I would absolutely play with my dive bombers and the bathtub bombers, and I float so much I could use my belly as an aircraft carrier. Let that. Okay, you got to enjoy that visual. There's a mental image you'll not soon shake. Ken and Marina with an umbrella drink. So, anyway, getting back to the models we were talking about. So you say the Monogram cars didn't sit right. How were they detail wise?
They were okay. They vacillated. They did very few what you would consider to be passenger cars. They did a lot of race type cars.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of roadsters and stuff and dragsters. Yeah,
dragsters, hot rods. Then they got really heavy into NASCAR. As a matter of fact, some of the early and a lot of the late, old vintage cars, NASCAR cars that Salvino puts out are the old Monogram kits.
Yeah.
And in those days, there was one or two cars that dominated, and so all you did was make different decals. Same cars, which is the key to success.
Well,
you don't have to make that many different kits, but you can just make decals and packages.
Well, NASCAR was the gift to the kit model of the car industry for just that reason. I mean, hey, let's make...
And then when it turned bad, it got ugly.
How's that?
I mean, you couldn't give this stuff away when it went bad because it just reached an oversaturation point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, what Mike S is saying, the one thing that always rubbed me about the Monogram kits was I knew they were trying to make it where it could work, but they put the big grooves in the bomb so the little trapeze could work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and of course the bomb always came out and just flipped doing circles, 360s all the way to the floor. But I hope it lands on the fusing mechanism. But
the good thing with the Monogram planes were at least you had features.
yeah,
The wings folded, the bombs dropped, the gear worked.
Yep.
You know, it was a little something extra.
It was.
I mean, you had to work to make it work, but it was another feature.
And if you didn't want it and you wanted to make it look authentic, you just, if you're a real model builder, you just use a little putty or something and fill it all in.
Yeah.
But I saw a 148 scale SBD. I think it was Jack's Con. I don't know if it was Accurate Miniatures or which one, but it had a complete full cockpit. I mean, it was a world apart from the Monogram kit. And I was, of course, it cost 5 times as much, but 3 times as much. But Monogram, the last Monogram car I built, and the only one it was the Dragster, who's the Blues Brothers Dragster for the Blues Brothers 2, and the decals had gotten kind of old and were a little problematic, but the car itself really fell into place, and so. That was, I was very impressed with the quality of the styrene.
Chris Pacer said he put a piece of clay in his bomb.
Oh, that's a thought, yeah. Give it some weight and some heft, yeah. If you keep it up towards the front, it'll probably fall nose first. Well, the thing I did was I took that, which now, God, this model would be worth something, of course. It was the big Aurora TFX, the short-nosed F-111 Navy prototype, and I jammed a couple of rocket engines in it and shot it off a rail. Aurora plastic was so heavy the bloody thing mostly survived.
Yeah. Who built the one that had the torpedo that came out the back?
Came out the back?
There was a jet. It was a Navy jet.
Oh, that's the Vigilante. And those weren't torpedoes. Those were nukes.
I remember the kit, and it worked. It came with one, and it would come out the back.
That's just like Monogram made the F-105, I think, with a working ejection seat. And the deal though was that the Vigilante, the A5, on paper it was a great idea. We're going to make this sleek, supersonic Mach 2 plus airplane with fly-by-wire. It had so many firsts on it for the Navy, or for aircraft in general. And they would, the idea was we're going to put the nukes up between the engines in this tube like a Pez dispenser, and it'll just shoot them out over there, just jettison them over the target. A little parachute will pop out, drag it out. The jet flies away, the parachute drops, the nuke goes off. And, Bob's your uncle. Well, he says the Revell A5. And maybe it was Revell. I thought it was Aurora. It might have been Revell. But,
it was Revell. Oh.
But the problem is that they didn't learn until they, built the airplanes, and that when they catapulted them off the carrier, the latches couldn't hold the G-forces. So everything was breaking loose back there and sliding free, sometimes falling out. So they realized, great, they couldn't get the system to work reliably. I mean, they did get it to work, but not reliably. We're dealing nukes. I mean, come on, reliable is the name of the game. So somebody said, hey, we still got this really sleek Mach 2 airplane. We can do something with it. And, of course, it became the Navy's recon plane for a very long time. And amazing airplane. Trying to make these features work on a model is pretty ambitious. I mean, let's put it this way. The Navy couldn't get it to work on the real airplane, and now we're going to try and get it to work in 148 scale styrene.
Never underestimate the tenacity of a
modeler. I have seen model makers do some pretty impressive stuff. Like they'll heat thermal. It looks like a railroad tie. It's got that I-beam shape to it, but they'll heat thermal it in a circle, and they'll make rings to make the inside, or just strips, and they'll make like the formers and stringers for the inside of a fuselage of a rocket or a plane. I'm kind of like, that's beautiful work, but are you going to have some access hatches where we can see it? And I mean, this is a lot of work. And I'm like, no. They put the model together like normal. I'm like, so why did you do all this work? More authenticity, make it more real. I'm like, but you can't see it. Yeah, but I know it's there. And I'm kind of like, you're insane. I mean, it's kind of a beautiful form of insanity, but, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know what? You know, good on you. And I'm like, please don't tell me you get one of the models that has all that formed on the inside and that you sand it off and make your own. And he's like, well, you know, they're not really accurate. I'm like, oh my God. But when I was at the Alabama, the USS Alabama, they had a Redstone rocket laid on its side. I guess it's just laying on the grass, and of course it didn't have any engines or tankage in it. It's just the airframe, or should we call that a space frame? And I looked up inside it, and I was shocked at how many circular formers there were. And then of course you got the stringers going the length, and the skin's riveted onto that. And I was like, I mean, those things, there had to be one every 10 inches or something, way more than an airplane has. And then it dawned on me, this thing's got to be able to go Mach 5. Of course it's robust as heck. And you see all this magnificent workmanship done on a one-shot system. You're like, man, what a shame to waste all that beautiful work. And I was just thinking, you know, if you wanted to make a really nice Redstone model rocket, you need to have some of that, in there, so that you can, and have panels that you can move so you can see it, you know, or make a clear one, like the Phantom Mustang. I'd love to get like a Phantom Redstone. That would be so cool. You appreciate how much framing and work, you know, whereas the Atlas is the complete opposite. It's basically an aluminum balloon. And I did not expect that. I know where they were.
Well, if you remember the old Strombecker Disney Man in Space Kids,
yeah,
the first one had a clear side and had cardboard inserts that showed what the inside of the rocket would look like.
Oh, that's cool.
It was very cool because you didn't have to put all that together.
Well, that ITC later Glencoe Explorer 1, I have one up on the shelf. I didn't put the guts in it because I sealed it up. But, it comes with a complete opening side where you can see all the equipment that's inside Explorer 1. I always thought that is an awesome kit. For that reason, it's STEM before there was STEM. It was a STEM kit before there were STEM kits. And
was that the Revell kit?
No, that was ITC and then later Glencoe.
Oh, okay.
And although Renwall's pretty good about that, kind of doing some of that stuff too. The thing about the Renwall kits is you wind up with the oversized latches on hatches on the tanks and everything because they all operate. Which brings us to our next model. We were talking about Monogram, of course. Now their arch enemy Revell, and I was talking to Jim about his slant 6, which there it is, the quarter scale, and the research that went behind these models is impressive. Some of them needed a little bit better instructions, but just the research that goes behind some of these models. Now, have you built many Revell model cars? What do you think of them?
The early ones were pretty bad. Like the ones that had the multi-part bodies.
Uh-huh.
When Jim got there, like in the early 60s, they started making them better. Their cars are pretty decent. They're pretty good. Their planes are good. The submarines were good. You know, their kits of the non-Tamiya class of kits were very good. They were like the head of the class
Mm-hmm.
as far as quality and detail and ease of assembly.
Well, Jim said when he did the Slant 6 that they sent him a real engine to work with, which really
Yeah, he had
obviously.
the engine in his office,
Yeah.
sitting on a display from the LA car show.
By the way, he's planning to go to Bonneville, so I'm halfway inclined to try and get out there and join him.
He's been there many times.
Well, he's a fixture
I mean,
there.
he used to go there when Mickey Thompson was there because
Yeah.
he did Mickey Thompson's cars when he was the product guy at Revell.
Yeah.
You know, the Challenger one,
Uh-huh.
the Tempt one.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in
Yeah.
there's that photograph of him. He's the one with the fire extinguisher. Was that Breedlove's car?
He was there when Craig Breedlove did it. He was there when they filmed the movie The World's Fastest Indian with Anthony Hopkins.
He was telling me that, yes.
Yeah, and he was interviewing him for a magazine.
And
Yeah.
guys, if you don't know, we're talking about Jim Keeler, who I got to go visit down in Orlando the other day. There's a video up about it, and we went to Desertland, and of course, he I got to be honest though. He knows all the race cars and all that stuff, and he knew a lot about a lot of the cars. But I think you might have the edge on him on like domestic American cars, and the
Yeah.
some. I don't know. I'd like to get you two. I'd like to take you two. It like make you like put earmuffs on you, or give you a piece of paper. Have you guys just walk through Desertland writing down what every car is, and then see who comes out ahead.
Jim is more of a hot rod land speed racer car kind of guy.
Right.
You know,
right.
Jim, as you know, and he told you, if many of the listeners don't know, I mean, he lived with Ed Roth for like 9 months when he first moved to LA. You know, so which is why they did a lot of Ed Roth cars in Revell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm looking at your slide with all these kids here, and I'm looking at the miniature HO cars.
Yeah.
Up in the center top, which were Chrysler cars.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are so hard to find today and worth a fortune.
I'll bet they are.
It's unbelievable. They're HO scale. They were when Revell had the idea they were going to get into HO trains and HO accessories, and they came out with all these little cars, and they were very well detailed. And they go for a fortune if you can find them. The Slant 6 goes for a fortune.
Good luck finding one.
Untouched.
David Uhas says he saw the video I did on Peerless and Peerless Max and those others. Yeah, that was a very hard video to research. There's not a lot of information about them out there. These smaller kit model companies that only had a dozen or 2 dozen kits, and they can be really tough to find out much information on. But because the first thing anybody does is when they get one of those packs is they break it up, and of course it's really valuable if they're all together, and But the Slant 6 is, I honestly don't even know if there's any of them out there. They're rare as hen's teeth.
Slant 6 engines?
Yeah.
Real ones?
No,
there's still
the kit.
plenty of them.
No, the kit.
The kit's hard to find.
Yeah.
It really is. The molds are destroyed. First, they got destroyed. There's no mold for it, so it can't be remade from the original mold.
Let me
which
address.
Is a shame because it was a great kit.
Yeah, let me address something here real quick that Celebrating was asking. Okay, yes, Lou did get a visit from the FBI because not that the kit was too accurate, but you got to remember it's the height of the Cold War. He's making a model of a submarine and showing what a lot of people who really weren't in the know thought were secrets. And he's like, look, he had to show him the magazines that he got all the information from, because it wasn't like today. In those days, you would have these government agencies that would think that they got to protect state secrets, completely unaware that some other agency had run a magazine article or a news article about it. So one group would think it was a secret and one wouldn't. He did have the feds pay him a visit. I guess you could say he was investigated, but they just wanted to make sure, because don't forget he was also out in Venice, California, where a lot of the technology is being developed. And there were cases of commercial companies that were getting access to stuff they weren't supposed to have. There was a big stink when they made the movie Dr. Strangelove, because the cockpit of the B-52, the set that they used, was way too accurate.
Yeah. Way too accurate.
And that caused,
Well,
when the movie, I think it was when the movie premiered and came out, they actually did hold an investigation, and there was nothing they could prove, but apparently an Air Force, because again, the B 52 was still a lot of secrets about that airplane back then. An Air Force officer was a friend of Kubrick's, and he got him a B 52 manual to take pictures so they get the aesthetics right. And they never charged anyone with anything. I don't even know if they ever found who it was, but they did find out that But they eventually decided no harm was done. But that actually did cause quite the little row, and that's happened more than you might think. There was a guy who went to prison for stealing models out of the model shop, and I want to say it was at Northrop. And he was, I forget if he was janitorial staff or what he was, but the place be closed down, he had access, and he just probably thought they were model airplanes. I'll just swipe one and give it to my kid. No one will notice. He didn't realize these were handmade models of secret projects. I remember.
whoops.
Yeah, I remember about 20, 25 years ago when that was articles in the magazine about that. So he got big trouble over that. I mean, like prison time trouble. And
There's a famous picture of Lou Glazer
holding the sub
that appeared on the front page of many newspapers when that happened, of him coming out of the water in his swimming pool holding the model of the submarine.
Yep, I remember that. I actually used to have that picture. I think I might have used it in the History of Revell video. Lou was a character.
Mm-hmm.
I actually I never met him, obviously. He passed away in 71 or 72. What I saw him on a game show. That guy, if he hadn't been making models for a living, he had a voice that was perfect for radio. He had one of the most deep, Barry White, gravelly voices I've ever heard. And when he spoke, it just came out with authority. And he was on some kind of game show.
He was one of the only guys who ran a model kit / toy company that employed market research people.
That is true.
And investigated different arenas that you could have made kits of things in to try to make the line better and more saleable.
And that's one of the reasons for the success. He also, his wife, Royal, had gone to Berkeley, and they lived in California, and they were West Coast people, and they were catching some flack from parents groups about making so many military models. And Lou just told them point blank, because they had made a bunch of STEM and educational models that didn't sell worth a crap. And
he bombed.
Then he told them point blank, look, I would love to make, benign stuff, but that isn't what sells. And I got a business to keep open. And
but they made the Dr. Seuss kids after he did a lot of research, and they tubed something horribly.
Yeah, and Chuck's talking about the secretary that had to test build the kits. When Royal had to take over the company, she never built a model. So they said, well, look, why don't you build a model so you kind of understand what we're doing? And she built, I think it was a B-25, and she was so proud when she was done, and she didn't realize she had the wings on upside down. And part of me wants to build one with the wings upside down just in honor of that.
Yeah.
But, and they said they didn't have the heart to tell her because she was so proud of herself.
Yeah. She was quite the woman. She was named Model Executive of the Year like in 1975.
I actually found the magazine that had the picture of her on the phone there was a cover for that.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, Playthings.
What? And I lost it. I lost it when one of my computer dumps or something, and I went back looking for it. Could never find it again. But now I know the exact photo you're talking about. And Jim even said that she always dressed like a movie star. I mean, she was always in finery and carried her. So she was a
very attractive woman.
And she was a how can I put it? She was a Berkeley educated California socialite, And
she was a good businesswoman too.
Um,
she really was.
But the
But she took over for him when he died.
well, they spent a year or
She
two
made
getting
a
her
lot
ready.
of good decisions.
Yeah, she'd already worked at the company for a long time, but they spent some time getting her ready because they knew what was coming, and of course Lou was a workaholic. She complained that he'd come home from work and fall asleep at the dinner table because he'd been up all working so hard, and Belenka, he's talking about when Belenka took the MiG-25. Oh my God, I remember when that happened. That was all over the news. I read the book MiG Piloting, and Belenko passed away not recently, or not too long ago, fairly recently. But I remember reading it, and he actually got to go back to Russia and see his extended family and everything after a while. After all was forgiven, but.
That's a trip I would have thought twice about making.
He wouldn't have been able to make it today, I'm sure. But I love what Habitual Line Crosser says, and he's right. He talks about how vastly superior, American aircraft are to their Russian counterparts, and he always talks about how, look, you told us you made airplanes that could do all this magical stuff, so we made airplanes that could do that and beat them. It's not our fault that you lied, and our airplanes are 50 times as good as they need to be. And it's true, that we basically have these super airplanes because we were designing them to fight phantoms or to fight ghosts that don't actually exist. And when we got the MiG-25, that was the first window into, you're kidding, they do this. How did they do that? Is that steel?
They still had tubes and rivets. They weren't even polished. They weren't even leveled down. They were just sticking up.
When you got those gigantic Tamanskis, who cares? You bludgeon your way through. The tubes, however, actually made some sense. Not just because of the state of the art of the technology, but as I understand it, tubes are much more resistant to electromagnetic pulse. So you start dropping nukes, so it had a better chance of surviving. But most likely, it was just
also the radar was so powerful, according to the book. The radar was so powerful that it was illegal to turn it on ground. They could kill a rabbit at 25 yards with the thing.
I don't doubt it. And the engines had to replace the hit Mach 3. They scared the crap out of the West when that one went over Israel at Mach 3 something. And what they didn't know at the time is that when it landed, the engines were completely trashed. But still, it did it. Give the devil its due. But getting back to the old kits, there was one company that always had a reputation. Oh, hey, it's Jim Keeler. Let me see if I can get him on here. Merge with active call. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Max. How you doing?
We're on the live stream. Are you watching?
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, me too. Well, I just wanted to call and tell you thank you for the interview and stuff.
Oh, great.
A really nice visit to Desertland. That was fantastic. Of course, that beautiful Chrysler Imperial caught my attention.
I'm not the only one who has good taste.
Yeah, Steve and Ken are on the line. So,
what's the date of the show? I'm trying to find it on my YouTube and I can't find it.
Oh, I just put it up of the video I did with you.
Yeah.
Oh, that was just a couple of days ago. Let me see. It should be like 2 days. Let me look here and open a window, and I will tell you real quick here. It should be like 3 days ago, but let's see. That would be 2 days ago. It's with Jim Keeler at Desertland. When you go to Max's Models, you want to click the thing, just it says videos. That should put them in order, and it's about 4 videos back. And it says.
What is the date on it?
Well, it says 2 days ago. So let me see.
15.
Yeah, it just says 2 days ago. So that would be the 15th.
The 15th. Okay. That's what I'm looking for now. So I'm flipping through there.
Well, Jim, since I got you on the live stream, we're live here. Why don't you, if you can, mention we were just talking about you a minute ago. About you. I had mentioned you're going back to
Yeah, so you better
Bonneville.
get off.
Well, I had mentioned that you were talking about going back to Bonneville. I'd love to go out there, and that you were there when.
So your live stream 195.
Yes.
That's what we're on right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll flip that on then.
And make sure to turn the volume down if you do. But you were there when Breedlove set his record, right?
When who?
Breedlove, Craig.
Craig Breedlove at Bonneville.
Oh yeah, I was there. Yes. Well, I was there the day before.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I put the fire out on the car.
And Steve was just saying you're also there when they made the movie The World's Fastest Indian.
Yeah, I was. I had interviewed the writer, whose name I can't remember. Anyway, the old guy. And afterwards, they asked me if I'd like to sit in on a shooting, and I said sure. And they had a great big platform in the middle of the area. With all the tents and stuff around it, and where they were doing the filming, and they had built a replica of the motorcycle and put it on a stand that had an engine on it, and it also had vibrators and stuff, so that the whole thing would shake like as if he was riding it down the salt. And so what happened was it was about 4 feet off the ground. And they let me sit right in front of that assembly. So as I'm looking up, I'm looking right into his face and his hands holding onto the handlebars in that scene where they show him going across the salt.
Ah.
So I'm right below that. If I put my finger up, it would have been in the shot.
And tell them how he spoke to you.
Well, I went over to the PR guy. I was out there shooting for magazines, okay? So I went over to the PR guy and I said, I told him who I was and what I do. And I said, would it be possible to interview him for an article, And they said, oh, sure. Yeah, no problem at all. So he was sitting in one of those movie type chairs, that they have with your name on them across the way. And in the middle of that area was that motorcycle on the stand for the shoot with the cameras and everything set up, And so I started walking over towards him, and he got up and started walking towards me. And he was speaking the language of, what was the name of the movie?
Dr. Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter. So he was speaking as Hannibal Lecter, and he was explaining how he was going to cut me up and eat me for lunch.
With a nice Chianti.
And some fava beans.
Yeah, and then he came over and shook hands and went into his normal voice, and we sat down and I spoke with him for maybe 25 or 30 minutes, which was a lot of fun. And so unfortunately I never got the article published, but nevertheless I had all the notes. And then they said, we're going to shoot this next scene, and he's going to be riding across the salt on the bike. And of course, I knew the storyline and stuff because I had been out there for 2 or 3 days. And they had gone down to L.A. and other parts of the country, primarily Los Angeles, and brought up to the salt about 30 or maybe 40 cars, so that they had all of these real Bonneville cars from that period of time sitting all around the salt, all over the place, in their own pits. So Mickey Thompson's Challengers had a pit, and so forth and so on. And so I got some great photographs of those cars. And the interesting part about it was there was no other photographer from any other source who was out there shooting pictures of those cars on that location. So I have all of these beautiful color transparencies of all of these cars, Thompson's Challenger, the Redhead, you name it, they were out there. And I got to take pictures of all of them. So that was a blast and a half. And then on the last day of shooting, they started tearing the sets down, and on one of the sets there was a poster of the event, and also there was a set of drawings that they used to set up the pits and to set up the whole deal, for the shoot. And so I got all of those too, which I still have.
Well, real quick, while I got you on the horn, we were talking about the slant 6 model at quarter-inch, quarter scale.
Yeah, the Revell one, yeah.
Yeah, and Steve was saying that you had a thing in your office, the real engine.
Yeah, I had after they used the real engine to mold fiberglass off of, and then they used those as the patterns. And using a pantograph, they reduced it down 4 to 1, or 1 to 4 actually, and to the size of the, and that's how they cut the tools. So the actual serial number on that engine is on the model is the actual real serial number. So when they were through with all of this stuff, they didn't know where else to put it, so they threw it all in my office. Well, I had a big office, but it took up a lot of space. And
now they put it back together at this point, hadn't they?
I was writing for Peterson Publishing for writing custom models, and so I knew all the people over there, and so I went over one day, and there was a guy that was building the XR6 Roadster, and so I asked him, I said, so how's the project coming? He says, well, I'm doing great, except I can't find an engine.
Here you go.
And I says, well, I've got an engine. He says, what do you mean? You got one that I could use, that I could have? And I said, yeah. And I said, the only problem is it's a slant 6. And he says, oh, that's even more cool. So a couple of days later, he brings his pickup truck over, comes over to my office and hauls it all out of there, cleaned my office out, took all the parts for the slant 6 engine, and built the engine up, and that's where the name XR6 came from, was the 6-cylinder slant 6 engine. And then the interesting part about it is that AMT did a model of the kit, so the model was of a Revell engine.
I love it.
So yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I got the opportunity to do stuff like that because while we were doing models of the cars, we didn't do like AMT and Monogram did and go out and photograph an engine compartment and then use a photograph to make the parts. I went around to all of the companies that made all the parts that went in that engine, and I got them loaned to us while we used them, and I provided those to the engineers and the model makers so they could make really accurate models of all of those parts, which is why the custom car parts kits were also realistic.
Okay.
Which also meant that I had hundreds of parts scattered all over my office, enough to build a hot rod.
It's like that Johnny Cash song about it's a 54, 55, 56.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
Yep, one piece at a time, baby. One piece at a time. Well, Anyway, Jim, you should be able to find that video on the 15th, but it should just be about 4 videos back. I mean, I've got your name on the title, so you shouldn't have any.
Yeah, I saw that. I
okay.
did see it earlier, but it was on the TV in the bedroom, but I came in here to watch it on the big screen, so, and have my wife watch it with me. So we just got back from our trip to Florida.
So you're back home safe and
and
sound.
we flew into Las Vegas and figured, and the plane landed at 5:55, and it was actually early, and we thought, well, we'll be home in less than 2 hours.
There you go.
Well, we got out on the highway, and there was a racing event at the racetrack at 10 miles north of Las Vegas, where they run the NASCAR race and drag racing. And so all 5 lanes of the freeway were blocked up, bumper to bumper, going 20 miles an hour.
There you go.
All the way to the racetrack. And once I got to the racetrack, there was one vehicle on the highway besides me, and he just took off and went like crazy. So
yeah, that was like me going to Bike Week. Had the same problem passing Daytona. Well, Jim, thanks for checking and calling. I appreciate that. Unexpected surprise. Add a little more information to the live stream because we were literally just talking about you when you called. And I thought, uh-oh,
I'm in trouble.
We're as I said, we got something wrong. Keeler's calling us to straighten us out.
Okay, I'll give it a try then. Thank you very much. You have a good evening.
Take care.
Thanks. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Well, folks, that was an unexpected surprise. A visit from Jim Keeler, master model designer, master model maker. And be careful how you say that. Well, that was fortuitous, wasn't it, Steve?
Yes.
Ken, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ken, is Ken still there?
Oh,
yes, of course.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure. I'm doing this off a cell phone. You start merging too many calls, somebody might get, a seniority bump. What in the airline they call a bump and flush. But so anyway, we got well, that was fun, and Jim's a super guy, and I'm just ridiculously talented. What is he? He's 85 and still going at it. Still making models, still making mold. The Masters. I think they're gonna use his that wooden carving that he made of the world record car, the Breedlove's car. They're gonna was one of the Spirit of America. Oh, yeah, they're gonna use that. I think as the master for a mold. But,
yeah, he's gonna make them out of resin.
Oh, okay. And the guy's got skills.
And I have first dibs on the first one.
But, well, that brings us although, we were talking about, are the old kits as good or bad as we remembered. And that brought us to the last company I thought we talked about, and that's Tamiya. And, Tamiya, kind of the gist of this whole live stream was, are the old kits really as bad as we remember? And then I get a Tamiya and it's the other. Are those kits as good as we remember? And I kind of think they were. I have built a couple little Tamiya kits recently, and maybe they weren't quite as good as I remember, but they were still good.
They're like the Rolls Royce of model kits.
Yeah.
They fit together well. They're highly detailed, and if they have any moving parts, they work.
Yeah.
I would love to get my hands on that Bluebird CN7 kit.
Oh, yeah. The main thing I built from Tamiya is armor and some airplanes. I don't have to describe building them because, I like Monogram, but I built the Monogram 148 scale P38 and the Tamiya 148 scale P38. And although they both looked good when they were done, the Tamiya kit just went together so much more easily.
How do they compare price-wise?
Now that's where you run into the trouble. A Tamiya is 2-3 times as expensive. It's easily going to be twice as expensive. In fact, I did a video about that. I showed the Revell Monogram Mustang versus the Tamiya Mustang. One is, I think it was like $29. The other's like $58. I'm like, are you kidding? And and the thing is, when they're both done, yeah, the Tamiya kit looks a skosh better. Monogram actually had a few features the Tamiya kit didn't have. But they're both sitting on my shelf, and I'm like, I look at them, I'm like, yeah, I don't see 50% price difference in the finished product. And where I think Tamiya really excels is in the build quality. When you're done, I mean, it just goes together with less argument. With the final product, I mean, it can only look so realistic, and technology changes and people catch up.
So do you think that less experienced model builders should go for the Tamiyas first?
No, I think they should go for the Monogram first, because if you're inexperienced, it's less expensive. It's a skosh simpler. The fit is good enough. There were a couple of little issues, but if you're a beginning modeler, they're not things that you need to niggle about. In fact, I can tell you what one of them was with the Monogram kit. It was the belly scoop, the way it goes together. There was a lot of sanding and putting to get that smoothed out. There were a lot of edges showing. But when they were both done, I was like, you know what? They both look fine. Yes, the Tamiya kit is... I have been told that it's Tamiya. The Japanese do not inflect like we do. It's not Tamiya or Tamiya. It's Tamiya. One word. All monotone. That is what I have been told. And
Meanwhile, I think that they're the kits that after you get all your skills down that you build.
yes. When you get... now, that's not a bad way to look at it. If you're a kid, give your kid an Aurora or a Lindberg to let him, do his first dozen kits just to get used to building models. And when they start to get cleaned up, then move him up to Monogram, Revell, or AMC, or AMT, I mean. And then when he's really like, hey, man, he's making nice stuff. Okay, here's your Tamiya or your Hasegawa. And don't screw it up, kid. Take your time. That's an expensive kit. Well, the thing about Tamiya, for the most part, and this is especially with the more modern kits, is they include a ton of detail. Now, that being said, I don't think Tamiya has any advantage over AFV Club. I built some of their stuff, or Accurate Miniatures. They're all, those guys are all playing in the same league.
Oh. Yeah.
Tamiya was doing it earlier, and they set the bar, and they set it pretty freaking high. Now, some of the older Tamiya kits, like that M41 Walker Bulldog, pretty straightforward kit, because it's an old one. And that's one reason they're $20 when all the new Tamiya armor's $50, because they're using molds that are 40 years old. And it's still a good kit, and it's a great first tank or something, goes together easily. But it's not going to have all the detail of one of their later kits. And still, I mean, I still see that thing over at Hobby Lobby. It's, I think I've seen it at Hobby Lobby. My guess is Hobby Lobby might be ordering by price point. That may be why it made it in there. But, yeah, Airfix is, yeah, you're right. Nathan's talking about Airfix. They have upped their game. I got to give them credit. I think Airfix, they were making all their stuff in India. I don't know if they still are. God, it's hard to keep track of where the companies go and everything. But,
Yeah, they mold everything there. Yeah.
Revell of Germany molds most of their stuff in Poland.
Right.
Airfix molds most of their stuff in India. Round 2 molds most of their stuff in China.
China.
The boys, Atlantis, do both China and the U.S., depending on where the molds are located.
No, it's all done in the U.S.
I thought they still had some molds in China.
Yeah, but they're not running them.
Do you know what those molds are?
No, there is a list. I remember seeing it, but it's stuff that they're not doing.
Okay. Well,
Is it stuff that they should do?
It might be, but the chances, what they should have done was years ago when they bought the company, they should have went over and got those molds back, because it's very difficult to get your molds back from China.
yeah.
Once they're there.
Now,
And now with the tariffs and everything, it's going to be virtually impossible.
well, one more thing I was going to chat about. This is the somebody who still has yet to identify themselves sent me 2 of these Voyage of the Bottom of the Sea views, and I built the one that was lighted the other day. I'm giving this one to Steve, and as a gift because he's done so much for the channel. And I'm also giving him. They sent me 2 copies of this book on tokusatsu, which is Japanese special effects, which is mostly models. I call it the Godzilla book. It's all kinds of stuff. And this 33 Willis that was given to me, I'm giving this to Bruce Mystic Modeler Ships next time I see him. But I wanted to talk about the Seaview model for just a minute. This is, I don't know how old this mold is, but this kit, which is an easy kit to build, but a little bit of flash up here with the periscopes and everything, extremely tweezer tiny, microscope tiny parts up there. But more importantly, there were a few minor fitting issues with the kit, and nothing critical, but it did not just fall together. You're going to be needing a lot of clamps and everything to hold stuff in place. But once it got together, it got together. If you
now, according to scale names, is this a new mold or is this the old Aurora kit?
Let's see. Well, it's from Mobius. I would think it's a new one, but you know what? Let me look it up. Okay, it's S-E-A-V-A-E-W. All right, there's the Mobius 1/128 2012. And so I'm looking for the one that has this box art where it's jumping out of the water. Okay, let's go to Mobius.
You got sleep in the back. We'll sleep out here.
2009. It's a 2009 tool, so I'm calling that a new mold.
Oh, okay.
They also in
So
2012,
it's a new mold.
but in 2012, Mobius apparently, this is 1/350. They put out a larger 8-window version in 2012.
What
And
scale?
1/128. And
Okay.
there's another one that says 201X. Apparently they did one with new parts, which has a flying sub.
Yeah, I have the big one that shoots the missile that has the 8 windows, but it's
Okay.
big.
Well, the 1/128 would be roughly twice the size of this one, but I think that's the Mobius one with the 8 windows. Yeah, it shows the missile going out of it. Did it come with a flying sub?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's the one I have. I haven't built it, but I have it.
Okay.
I got it as a gift.
Well, the nice thing is with that one, you'll have, since you'll have 2 of them, you'll have both versions.
Yeah.
And somehow I managed to turn off my YouTube there.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments about the tariffs. Although we don't know what the tariffs are eventually going to shake themselves out to be.
Well, right now they're talking about that they're making progress, they're coming to deals, and that
Right.
So my guess is I don't. If they lower theirs and we lower ours, blah blah blah, you're probably not. I mean, everybody's taking a wait and see, which I understand, but I don't think it's going to be the big concern.
The deadline is the end of May, because if it's not resolved by the end of May, there won't be able to gear up production and get the stuff shipped in time to make it on the shelves for Christmas. So there's a bit of an emphasis to get it done by the end of the month.
And I don't see any reason they can't.
A lot of major customers have either canceled or cut back or put orders on hold, waiting to see how this is going to play out. So, but if it doesn't play out by the end of the month, you're not going to be able to get enough stuff in to fill the shelves for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of emphasis to get something resolved.
Well, hopefully they'll work it out.
Now, Craig just said the deal is that China's going to ship stuff to places like Vietnam and then reship it to the U.S. to avoid tariffs.
It's called transshipping.
Anybody who does that will never be able to sell anything here again.
Yeah, they already made that clear. If you try to transship, they'll take it out on the country that does the switch over.
And they have warned Canada, and Mexico, and several of the Asian countries, that if you do that, you will never ship anything into here again.
And the Vietnamese, my understanding is the Vietnamese, they've got a pretty cozy situation with us right now. They don't want to risk it. So,
No.
but now one thing the Chinese did talk about doing even before the tariff thing came in, believe it or not, China is becoming an expensive place labor wise. They have a thriving middle class now, and they're, as the old saying goes, you never had it so good. Well, they really never did.
That's why they have to resolve it, because they created a middle class that they never had, who are used to having phones and TVs and
cars,
the trappings of Western society.
And the extent,
so if you turn around and then say, okay, we're going to have tariffs and we're not going to make anything and ship anything, and then they're all out of work, well, you're going to have a couple of billion people that are going to be unhappy.
Never a good thing. Well, the other thing is that also there was talk about moving some of this manufacturing to Vietnam anyway, because it's substantially less expensive to manufacture in Vietnam. And I'm not just talking about models. I'm talking about cell phones and everything else.
Yeah,
and they've been looking at moving.
They make a lot of electronics there.
Yeah, and and the Vietnamese attitude is great. It's jobs for our people. We're all on board with that. Happy to play ball, and so the Vietnamese may become competition for the Chinese. So I don't think they want to risk that to help transship stuff for China. I know that was done with phones and everything for a lot, and it was a way to get around a lot of tariffs for a long time, and they, but we'll see. It's impossible to tell at this point. Now, one of the things that they can do, which I don't know if they would, but remember back in the 60s and 70s, Aurora had Aurora Canada and Aurora Netherlands, and they would move the molds up to Canada and have them shoot thousands of the things because they didn't have to pay a tax on them. If they shot it in West Hempstead and sent it to Canada, you got tariffed. But if you just sent the Canadians the molds and let them shoot their own, then you just, no big deal. And they did the same thing in England and the UK and the Netherlands. And now with the European Union, you get into any EU country and you're good for all of EU. So they could move the molds around or make copies of them. I don't think they make copies of them, but
the problem is getting them out of China. And that's
the problem. The Chinese won't let go of the molds. Yeah, that's no one's really tried because everybody's afraid if they do that they're gonna,
well, people who have tried, they've gotten a wall of red tape, which has just tied it up forever.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised, but I don't want to be too harsh on people. You make business decisions made based on things like cost analysis, and a lot of them moved this stuff over there 30 years ago. But a lot of people warned you.
Look at it this way. What's his name from Blanco, Nick. Nick tells you the story about how many molders there used to be in the United States.
Yes.
And how many there are now.
Uh-huh.
And it's a fraction of what there was because it all moved offshore.
It's less than 1/10.
So that's where you got to go,
I think he said at one point there were like 15,000 mold making operations around the United States, or 5,000, I forget. It's quite a few because they had to make molds for everything, for the auto industry, for everything, every radio knob, everything made of plastic, right? Now there's like 1,200, which, that's not much. But not to get off topic again, but we're having trouble making enough artillery shells and stuff like that. And even though the money's not the issue, there's literally only so much bomb case making capacity. And they're actually talking about building new factories like we did in World War II. But that's not the problem.
Actually, just opened a new one up last year.
Well, that's not the problem. The factory's just a big empty shell. That isn't the problem. The problem is the expertise that goes in and the equipment that makes these things. And the expertise, how many people actually, how many real honest to God machinists are even out there anymore?
Very few, because it's all CNC done now.
But even that's what I'm getting at, is even they're in short supply. So if I looked at having molds made when I was thinking about going into model production, before I got a lot of cold water in my face about the realities of the kit model business, which it shocks me that anybody ever actually went into this industry. But the
This is where 3D printing comes in.
yeah, well, I think it's gonna, but
Thank you, Ken.
you know, I think Pete said at one point, if you know what you're doing, you can get a model mold made for $5,000. And I was like, huh? And
yeah, but you can only run about 10,000 kits out of it.
yeah, so
You know, look, now, so back to models. What about IMC? Don't you have any IMC kits on the presentation here?
I didn't think about getting of them. The IMC kits that I made, which were I only made the airplanes, which were not nothing like the cars. They were, I would describe them as average. You know, they got sued by Monogram for the Sky Raider and they won, and Monogram won, and showed that they basically more or less copied the Monogram Sky Raider, and which I'm like, really? It's not that hard. I mean, but and the settlement was like, it wasn't a lot. I forget, $1,500 to $15,000. Even adjusting for dollars, that probably didn't pay for the lawyers. I think that was more of a Monogram putting a shot across the bow. Don't copy our stuff. But
their car kits are amazing.
They're outstanding. Their airplane kits were average.
By the time you finish them, you never want to do another model kit again. Because they are the most, I mean, oh my God. I mean, how most of them didn't wind up getting thrown up against a wall is beyond me.
Who do you think they are, Fujimi?
Oh God, they're so fiddly with fitting this and fitting that, and it's just like it just drives you nuts. I mean, they're great kits when you're done with them, but God, putting them together drives you crazy.
IMC didn't make very many planes.
No, they're not for anybody with no patience. They're the kind of kits that you got to do a little bit and walk away for a couple of days and then come back. They're not the kind of kit you sit there and let's just power it through. No. But boy, are they great when they're done. But to do them, it's just like, oh.
Yeah, the battle damaged Sky Raider is the only propeller airplane they did. And it was one of those, that came with the ripped, oh, look, battle damage. And let me see here, just resize.
That was a big thing for a while, having battle damaged planes.
Oh, it was just another, sales gimmick.
No, I think the best sales gimmick was I forget what they call it, the thing where you had the little porthole, you looked in the sub and you looked in
the stereoscope or whatever as they called it.
Something like that.
And
I thought that was the best little gimmick.
Somebody actually
Jim tell you the story how he had to go in the submarine and take the pictures to
that. Photoscope.
Rotoscope, right.
And
that was an interesting little, and then Revell came out in the late 70s with the electronic kits that made the noise, and they moved on a platform. And I mean, it was just, let's try and find a couple of gimmicks other than just putting the kit together.
Well,
they were trying to make them into toys.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is that, like we've talked about many times, is that, less people are building models. Okay, how do we grab their interest? What can we do? And I'm putting up a picture of that Sky Raider, that it is the only propeller model that IMC made. And this is the one that got him sued. And I went out online and looked at the parts. Somebody did a comparison online, and it was about 80, 85, 90% compatibility. I mean, there was no question that the Monogram had. I was kind of surprised they won, but they did. And on the jet side, let's see.
It's pretty pixelated.
Yeah, it was a small picture. They made a Learjet, Skyhawk, and The Skyhawk wound up going to Lindberg. And I didn't know they made the Fokker 28. Good luck finding one of those. That airplane would have been brand new.
That was actually a big plane.
The Learjet was actually a pretty good kit.
It looks like it. And they came out with that, looks like in 67. And it's a 23.
Which Learjet? The 20.
Okay. That's a 23. That's the Gates Learjet. Because Gates bought into the company. He never had anything to do with the design of it. And these pictures are small, so let's see. Okay, Lear. But it has a full interior, which is nice. Okay, let's go here. Add image.
For a propeller airplane, that Skyraider was huge.
It's enormous.
Yep.
Carry as much as a B-17. There's the Learjet.
One engine.
Yeah, but it was slow and low. It was but it had loiter time. But there's the Gates Learjet and the Lear 23, and it looks like it has a full interior, which good luck for. That's another kit probably be fun to try and find. The Lear 20, I know some guys that flew that airplane. It was a real sports car, but if you didn't know what you're doing, it would flat out bite you. And
yeah, that was a pretty nice kit, and the door worked.
Oh, that's cool. You built it?
Yeah, it was a really nice kit, and it did have a full interior. Problem was you couldn't see most of it, but you know.
Well, that's why you pose it with the door open.
Yeah, well,
I remember saying that flying one of those is as close as you can get to being an astronaut.
Buzz Aldrin had one.
Mm.
In fact, Jimmy over at Jimmy's World found it out at Kissimmee. It's right there. It's not far from here, Ken. It's right there at the Tico Warbird Museum. They got Buzz Aldrin's old Lear 23 or 24. And he must have done well because those things are not cheap to operate. It's not in flying condition anymore, but it's mostly complete. But
Didn't the Lears go up to 43,000?
probably. I know
You
they
read,
do.
you read that book that we gave you about that. You don't remember?
I think we're at 41, and the Lear does not hurt for power. I mean, it's a the problem with the Learjets is they can go too fast, and I don't mean that as a joke. They can they had guys that hit the go fast button, override the safeties, trying to get in a hurry, and when you fly, the faster you go, the center of pressure over the wing moves aft. The faster you go, the center of pressure moves to the rear, which makes the nose heavier. So you have to have more up elevator to offset it, and you can run out of elevator trim, and you get going too quick. You get what they call mock tuck. Basically, there's not enough tail to hold the nose up, and the airplane just does that. And fortunately, Lears are built like tanks because you can find yourself in a world of hurt doing letting that happen. And
some people crashed doing that.
Oh, I'm sure. And they lost a couple of Lears early on. It used to be a single pilot airplane. The 23 came out. It was originally a single pilot airplane, and it's, how can I put this ever so delicately? It is not a single pilot airplane.
That's delicately.
I mean, don't get me wrong. A single pilot can fly the airplane, and if it's a nice VFR day or something in regular airspace, it's probably not that big a deal. But you get into weather, and busy airspace, a lot going on, you're going to get task saturated pretty quickly. The Citations did get single pilot typed. And then the Lear had a good autopilot, has a good autopilot. In fact, that's what made Bill Lear a millionaire, was his autopilots. And then the Lear I was in had the F5 autopilot, which they put those in military. It was a good lightweight autopilot. It was made for fighter planes. The F5 Lear autopilot. And Bill Lear was a genius by anybody's standard. He was not formally schooled. He invented the 8-track. He invented. He also had his failures, like he did the steam bus, which didn't catch on. He made his
We're
mark.
talking about Bill Lear.
Bill Lear, yeah.
Yeah. And you know who his daughter married?
No.
Adam West.
Huh. Oh.
Interesting.
But I read the book on him, and he started off. He made some improvements to. He was a native engineer. It just came naturally to him. He saw solutions that just escaped other people, and he was working in a factory, with a design team, and the electronic device they were making. He figured out, wait a minute, you can make this bigger and you can make this smaller, more efficient by doing this, and this. And he was smart enough to get a patent on it. And he was a smart guy. He got patents on all of his inventions, and he started making money. Then I think it was during World War II. He made this high-speed locking clutch that was really good for like bomb bay door. You ever notice the bomb bays on a World War II bomber? When the bombardier hits the button to open the bomb bay doors, they snap up them real quick and then stop. It was his clutches that did that, and he made a mint selling that and other stuff that he designed. And then he bought the Motor Victorola company, compressed the name to Motorola, made a bunch of improvements, and made a fortune when he sold that. And he was sitting on so much cash, he'd always had this fantasy about making a private jet, or he had actually been in aviation before. He was taking all Lockheed Lodestars and making what they call the Lear Star, which is basically monster engines, doing everything he could to clean up the airframe, flush. He tore them down to the frame. Modified them. I think he was working with D. Howard, and they would put new skin, flush rivet, make everything aerodynamic. You put these monster engines with 4-bladed props on them, and they called it the Lear Star instead of the Lodestar. And there's a few of them. I think 1 or 2 of them still flying, and they were fast. And then when he had enough money, he said, "Okay, I'm gonna build a business jet." Well, the Swedes had designed a fighter called the PO-16, and they elected not to put it in production. They built a couple of them, and they decided to go with a more advanced, I think the Lance, and a more advanced swept wings job. And then, so the PO-16 didn't, it became an orphan airplane. Lear bought the rights to the PO-16 to get the wings and tail, and that was what the Learjet uses is the wings and tail of the PO-16, and
I remember reading that he was terrible for modifying airplanes that were still being built because he was coming up with so many
absolutely horrible. No, a lot of the 23s were not identical because Bill was always down on the factory floor making little changes individually as the planes came by, and a lot of more improvements. So they finally had to chase him off the floor and go, "Bill, we have a schedule to meet." He always referred to things like the 8-track, which made him millions of dollars. He always referred to that as, and I quote, "just money making." But the one of my FOs flew the oldest Lear 23 flying. I don't think it's the prototype, but it belonged to Clay Lacey. And he said he was shocked when he got in the cockpit and he saw that the yoke was basically just a curved piece of bent tubing. Lear, when he sold, he needed a business partner. That's when Gates came in, thus Gates Learjet. I think Gates bought controlling interest because Bill was always spending his money on his inventions and probably getting into financial distress. Then when he left the company, he started working on the Lear Star, which was an interesting concept. It was a pusher, a turboprop pusher with a lot of potential, but it never went into production. He died, and that was that. But it was I believe the PO-16 was Swedish. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, I think they decided to build the Lanson instead, which had a swept wing. But the wing and what he got from the PO-16 if I'm not mistaken, was the wing, the tip tanks, and the undercarriage, which saved him a ton of wind tunnel test time because he had all the data. Now all he had to do was just put a fuselage on it, which is a pretty straightforward design, and he put on the T-tail. His motto was, "I would annihilate my mother to save a pound." People said you can't stand up in a Learjet. His response was, "You don't stand up in a Cadillac." He was after speed. Put a pair of CJ610s on it. The airplane actually got certified quicker than it was supposed to because an FAA pilot made a mistake and wrecked the prototype. He left this. I think he left the speed brakes deployed and tried to take off and just rolled off the end of the runway and tore it up. The FAA was so humiliated that they basically, fast tracked it through the certification process. Certification, but mind you, this is the 60s. Now, something very important to understand. And not only were the standards different back then, this was a very manual airplane in a lot of ways. It was designed to be single pilot, which was asking a lot. Maybe if you'd been a fighter pilot, and it flew like a fighter. Everybody said it flies like. I mean, it came from a fighter plane. And I believe Art Linkletter, the famous talk show host, and Rexall Drugs bought the first two Learjets, and he had no trouble selling them. And but then they was cranking them out. Then the crashes started. The airplane did have a lot of not bright design features that they didn't understand at the time or were pretty normal. For example, there was only one electric bus, right? There was no tiebreaker. So if you lost the electrics, if one bus tripped off, you lost all your instruments. And apparently, a guy is flying the thing, and he gets into bad weather, and the electric bus fries or pops or whatever, and he loses electric. So there's really not much he can, and they wound up probably upside down and came screaming out of the sky. And then there were one or two others. So they had to install a tiebreaker so that if the electrics popped, it would isolate the other side, so at least the instruments on one side or the other would be working. They required a first officer, and they made some improvements, and then they just went ahead and came to the Lear 24, which had all those improvements plus a little bit more room inside, and I think it had 2 windows. I don't know how many 23s they made. I don't think it was all that many. There's still a couple of them floating around. A chance to pick one up for $200,000. And
don't the 23s use control wire?
You mean cables?
For the control surfaces?
You mean control cables, like cable pulley?
Yes.
Probably. I don't know. I know they have an electric trim, but anyway. So.
Well, the reason I say that is because a lot of Lears got grounded because they timed out on the wires, and it wasn't the control wires, and it wasn't worth it to replace all the control wires.
Oh yeah, when I went and interviewed over at US Czech, that flew Lears, they had a Lear that had been cut up to make a procedures trainer out of them. They had the wings hanging up on the wall. I'm like, you guys put something that expensive up there? And he goes, thing was timed out. It's boat anchor. Huh? What do you know? And so.
And Nathan just put up, which a point I was going to make is a lot of them depressurized.
There were a couple of that. He's talking about the one with Payne Stewart. That was actually a much later model. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they determined that the one of the problems was it had an extremely long checklist for depressurization, loss of pressure, like 17 items. And the airlines, loss of pressure, the first thing we do is put our mask on. First thing. It's a memory item. And then they were like going through the checklist and going through these items when they both passed out. I think I read somewhere also, they thought that maintenance had mistakenly capped because it's chemically generated oxygen, it's not a bottle, and they had capped it to do some maintenance and not hooked it back up. So I'm not really sure. I've read both ways, and I'm not sure which is correct. But anyway, the other thing, the 23 had another limitation. It had a short range of like 700 miles. You could stay up about an hour and a half, and you had to find a place to land. And if they held you down at low altitude where you're really burning the gas, because those are pure jets on there, not fans, then you were really gobbling the fuel. That is a thirsty little airplane, but man, it moved like a bullet. And the thing is that Lear ran into competition with like Hawker and these other companies started making corporate jets. And there used to only be a handful of them. Now there's dozens, and it's become a huge industry. Yeah, I think it was a Lear 35. But a lot of the 20 series now, because the old stage 1 engines have been grounded anyway, the 23s and 24s, I imagine they're still out there. I flew in a 25G, which was the real rocket 550, and it was converted into a freighter. And I actually sat on the potty seat, and I never came out when we took off. That thing goes like a rocket. And it was an interesting airplane. But we got from Baltimore to Port Columbus, Ohio, 51 minutes each way. So.
Wow. That's pretty quick.
Yep. The 25, I think, is the fastest one they made, the 25G, I believe. And they've had a lot of mishaps with them because they're all over the place. And the 23s are unforgiving airplanes. They're a handful of. We had one crater out here at Jacksonville, I think, years ago. I forget what happened. The guy, I think he stalled it. They just had one going not that long ago, a medevac one. It was a later model too, and it actually was caught on like a ring cam. The pilot got disoriented on a crappy weather approach into somewhere in California, I think it was, and he thought he saw the runway, and he turned real steep and overshot the runway, tried to come back, and it just stalled. I think it stalled on him. And they had another one in good weather that did that during a runway swap, and that was just a repositioning flight. And they turned it. Lear will stall on you like that. But anyway.
Then wink.
The unmarked A-26 Invader, my idea of a personal legend. Yeah, A-26, later B-26 Invaders were converted into high-speed passenger transport, which, because they do not have a big fuselage. I mean, they're a little, but guys, go look up the Lear Star, that Lodestar that was modified by Lear. I mean, it's like a pair of Corsair engines on it or something. It was a beast. And I think there's one still flying. And I forget it's got like 4,000 horsepower or something like that. It's absurd. But there have been.
Well, you had the one in Philadelphia that crashed.
That's the one I was just thinking. Oh yeah, that's right, the Mexican crew. There's a lot of question marks about that one. They're not even sure those guys were qualified to be flying that thing. I don't know what the story was. But Steve Canyon shot down a B-47 because of depressurization. But look, these airplanes are not inherently dangerous, but you have to be trained, you have to be current, you have to fly professionally. They are not tolerant of people screwing around. And you take shortcuts, you're going to get burned. I know guys that have flown Lears for thousands of hours. They love them. They say nothing but good things about them. I say, what about these mishaps? And they're kind of like, they didn't know what they were doing. They weren't properly trained, or they went off script. You don't do that in those kinds of airplanes. Well, it looks like it's time to wrap up for the night. Now I got to go see if I can find an IMC Learjet on eBay or something. You got me curious about it.
You still have that book?
I do, somewhere. It should be right over here in my stack of airplane books somewhere. Well, you want to read it? It's not a thick book.
I just wonder if you still had it.
I never throw books away. Well, I've given a bunch of them away, but I think I would have kept that one.
Yeah, it's not a real big book, but I thought it had a lot of interesting information that you would like.
Yeah.
Not a big plane.
All right, guys.
There.
Well, I think we're going to plan a live stream next week. Might be, I've got friends and stuff coming over this week, so might be a little less content, hit and miss throughout the week. I will, man, I keep hearing something grinding.
There's who sounds like Morse code.
That's what I'm hearing. It's coming through, Captain, it's coming through my communications device.
And in 2 weeks, aren't you doing the live stream on a Friday night?
Yeah, in 2 weeks I'll be doing the live stream on a Friday night because I've got to do something on Saturday. Ken's birthday.
Hey, there's plenty of those kits on eBay.
Hey, you can tell them. It's all right. It's all right.
It's Ken's birthday on the 7th. The day after I post the D-Day video. Haha, how's that? I won't forget your birthday now that I know it's a day after D-Day. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Well, guys, I'll let you say your goodbyes because we're going to hang up. Monica, she has her way of luring me out of here with the delicious aroma that comes from the kitchen.
Well, guys, thanks for coming and spending another Saturday evening with us so you can be educated either correctly or incorrectly about the model kit business. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you next week.
You got to admit, Max's stories never get old. They're always full of interesting pieces of little information that you can just walk away and go, wow, that's really cool.
You remind me of Lionel Hutz from The Simpsons, the lawyer, when they go in his office. Hey, these law books are not only good for looking good in my office, they're full of juicy little legal tidbits. Okay, guys, well, take care of yourselves.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, say your goodnight, Ken.
Good night, Ken.
Guys, take care of yourselves. Hope you had a good time. We'll talk at you next week. As always, model on.
Thank you.